Well, hello everyone. I'm having a little bit of an interview here with Naomi Clark, who's a Bikram teacher. She teaches in London and Brighton, and wanted to have a conversation today about some other things that Naomi's interested in. As a lot of yoga teachers have side interests outside of yoga, there are some overlaps and some very interesting things going on with them. And with you, Naomi, I know we've had a lot of conversations offline about what you're involved in. So do you want to tell the folks like what is as part of your overall lifestyle and how yoga is just one part of a total healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, hi, hello, hi. So basically I've been practicing Bikram yoga for about 15 years now. I teach Bikram, practice Bikram, but also hot yoga and flow, other practices, yoga nidra, and I have a Vipassana practice as well, but I spend a lot of time in the hot room,
Right.
a lot of time in the hot room. And one of the things that I realized when I first started practicing Bikram yoga was, wow, there are teachers in the room. You know, when I was at a practitioner level, there are teachers in the room, and they're in this room every day.
Yeah.
And back in those days, I wasn't realizing so much that they were actually in the room maybe 3 or 4 times a day if they
Right.
were teaching class and having their own practice as well. So for me, I practiced for a couple of years Bikram yoga. It was very beneficial for me in the fact that I lost about 3.5 stone. I stopped smoking. The weight loss was incredible, cleared up my
Wow.
skin.
Now, can
Brilliant
I
benefit.
stop you for a moment? You know,
Yeah,
for ignorant Americans who don't know how to convert stone, the English term, to
right.
pounds.
About
Um,
50 pounds.
about 40 pounds you
Yeah,
lost practicing Bikram.
yeah. So it was that was massive for me. And there were fertility issues in my family as well. I was being told, you're probably not going to be able to have children, past a certain age, you need to hurry up with that. And there was all this sort of stuff going on that I was not in the best of health. And I had quite a toxic lifestyle compared to probably the average boulderite. Yeah, I wasn't cycling
Well,
anywhere.
there's still a lot of boulderites that have a rock and roll lifestyle. They're
Probably.
not
There are
fully in
a few out there.
the. Oh yeah, that's where I'm from, so I know some of them.
You know them. Okay. Oh, I don't know any of those rock and rollers. Yeah, and for me that really stood out, especially being in Colorado, because Colorado is one of the healthiest
Yeah.
states in the States. People there are super fit, super healthy, and
Right.
I was really not. So it was a big thing for me to even get through one Bikram yoga class,
Wow.
90 minutes in that heat. There's no air in the place. There's no oxygen. I couldn't breathe. I was like, oh my God, get me out. So I would go out and stand in the snow having a cigarette. And saying, well, I'll just get through this one class. I've paid for this class. I'd go back in, probably stinking of cigarettes, so I'd spray the perfume on as if that's going to cover it up. And anyway, it was a big, long change for me. And this,
Wow.
over a couple of years, I lost some weight, sorted my act out, and it was an interesting time because I was very close to my father, and my father was dying back in England. He had leukemia, and I came home. My father died, and he'd said to me, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I said, well, I'd really like to go and see that Bikram guy and get trained up and become a Bikram teacher. You know what? When you talk about Bikram yoga, your eyes shine like they did when you were a little girl coming out of ballet class. And so he reached down beside his bedside and he brought out this old teddy bear, a Steiff teddy bear. And when I was a teenager, an old lady, had sent my dad, who was an antique dealer. She'd sent him this teddy bear and said, "Could you give me any money for it?" And he was like, "This is a very valuable bear." He gave her some money for it. Parson Farley was the name of the bear. A beautiful, perfect condition Steiff bear. And he said, "Listen, sell Parson Farley. You can go on Bikram teacher training. And if you can save one person from dying from a stress-related illness, then all of this has been worthwhile."
Wow.
I said, but the teacher training is like $9,000, Dad. What am I going to do? And he said, listen, the bear will get exactly $9,000
Wait a minute. The bear, you can sell the bear on eBay and get $9,000 for it? What do you...
in an auction. It got $9,000 in a teddy bear auction 6 months after he passed away to the
Wow.
cent.
I've heard some inspiring stories about how people become yoga teachers, but this one that has to go at the top of the list. That's just like it sounds like somebody made it up.
No, true story. And
Wow.
for me, it was a really big thing because I had been run over at 17. I had four slip discs. I had no ligaments in my right knee, ACL ruptured, torn meniscus. And that was one of the reasons why I put on so much weight initially and started getting a toxic lifestyle.
Mm.
And the yoga was just helping me out in so many different directions that the physical changes were very small, really, compared with the mental and emotional changes
Right.
that were occurring, as a lot of people find.
Yeah,
So
certainly.
so I went off and I did my teacher training. I drove to California. I was living in Colorado at the time, and the training, it was absolutely fantastic. I got through it, and I taught all over the world. Very fortunate. I taught, back in Colorado, Hawaii, London, Jamaica, Ibiza, you name it. I was there getting the stuff on. This was a long time ago, 12 years ago, when I came
Mm.
back to England. Bikram had said, go and open a studio in Brighton. There were only four Bikram teachers in the whole of England at that point. There are about 400 of us now. So, so Bikram had said, open a studio, and I'd opened this yoga studio in Brighton by the sea, and had come back to England again. And the studio initially was great; it was very big. Yeah, so the studio was doing well, but then, I found myself as a single expectant mother. Bit of a surprise. Beautiful
Mm.
son now, nearly 10 years old, but there I had a studio, 10 to 15 people working for me. And I started getting really burnt out. I was practicing twice a day, I was teaching twice a day, breastfeeding for, first 14 months of his life. And the stress started piling on when my landlord was doubling the rent. Um, Water was coming in through the walls, heaters were popping, a lot of other studios were opening up in Brighton, and I was finding myself very, very stressed out.
And
Uh,
then kind of ironic too, because everyone kind of imagines that yoga teachers they're just in some kind of perpetual state of om,
oh
and
yeah,
but it was quite the opposite for you at that time.
yeah, it really was. And my practice was helping, but I was doing a lot of sweating, and you do lose minerals in the room when you're sweating so much. Sweat, sweat, sweat.
So what did you do to kind of counteract that? Or did you experiment with taking supplements? I assume you weren't downing bottles of Gatorade all day long. So what did
No,
you find really helped?
selling the studio
Oh, that would be a good step.
really helped for
Reduce some of
me.
the stress.
Yeah, because I found myself in a situation where I'd gone full circle. I had wanted to escape my stressful dot-com lifestyle and help other people, but it got to the point where I'd gone full circle. I wasn't helping myself. I wasn't in a state to be able to help other people. I was exhausted. I was in stage two adrenal fatigue, and I was very, very underweight. And I got to the point where I was having heart palpitations at night. I couldn't sleep. I was just, yeah, I was in a bad way. But when you're in something, you can't necessarily see what's going on. It's only when you stop and you take a step back that you get some perspective on something and you can see what's going on. And I see, a lot of studio owners, whether it's Bikram or other styles, very stressed out and trying to do the best for their students and do the best for their teachers. And it's a tricky job because, I always joke it's a bit like running a pub. You're there 24/7. You've got a
Yeah.
lot going on, people coming in and out, in and out, in and out all day long. And, when do you get to take a break? It's really challenging to do that. So these great intentions, as it starts out, can end up, if you're not careful as a studio owner, with you being very, very tired, very fatigued,
Right.
and very worn out.
Yeah, we've seen all kinds of stories about this. The studio owner that never gets to practice because they're
Yeah.
too busy kind of trying to help facilitate others having their experience that they're never having it for themselves.
Yeah, and this, I think, this goes back not just to studio owners, but this goes back through millennia. I love the story about Buddha's secretary, Ananda. He spent so much time being the scribe for the Buddha and helping the Buddha's disciples that he never had time to become enlightened himself. Ananda, meaning love. It's quite a beautiful story, and I kind of think about that same thing. Sometimes the facilitators of spiritual growth for other people don't necessarily get to nourish and nurture themselves in the same way. It was only after Buddha died, and Ananda wanted to join in with the other enlightened devotees the next day. He practiced and practiced and practiced, and it's as his head hit the pillow that he became an enlightened one. And then he could go and join the devotees the next day. But it's quite beautiful. It was only after Buddha died that his secretary became enlightened. It's crazy thinking that the Buddha had a secretary, but virtual PA wasn't around in those days.
That's true.
So yeah, so bringing it back, what I did, I sold the studio. I took a lot of time off for myself. I spent quality time with my son. I got into gardening. I retrained in yoga therapy. I took myself out of the hot room, not continually, not permanently, but just not doing those
Backed
four
it off a
classes
little
every
bit.
day.
Yeah.
And I got into what is termed now as superfoods.
Ah. So
And
can you define superfood? Because I mean I recently I've been a vegetarian for a while. I've switched to
right,
being mostly vegan. I have my moments where I slip. And I've read about like the properties of cacao and
yeah.
I eat a lot of quinoa and you kind of hear about like, oh, this has got great stuff, but what is a superfood?
Well, superfoods is a term, it's quite a recent term for what are basically natural foods. There's a lot of controversy really from people saying, they shouldn't really be called superfoods because really it's foods. But for most of us, we've traveled so far away from what is food.
Yeah.
We tend to think of food as some artificially, chemically manufactured product.
Yeah, in a package and
Yeah, exactly. The stuff that grows close to the earth, that suddenly becomes superfood, like hyper real uber food is, what our grandparents would have called dinner. You know, so this interesting term of superfoods. I mean, I remember a long time ago being in England and really craving the blueberries that I'd had in America as a kid. You couldn't get blueberries here. And it's only just recently, the past 5 or 10 years, that in the UK you can go into a supermarket and you can buy some blueberries. They might cost you £5 for a small punnet of blueberries, but those are one of the examples of foods that people would call superfoods. Blueberries, it's regular food, right? But another way of looking at superfoods might be indigenous foods.
ah.
So, foods that are not necessarily classified as foodstuffs, but might be classified as a souvenir product. And one of my favorite ones that's been really beneficial to me, and we can talk about that a little bit more, has been maca. It's a turnip root, and it's the biggest national product and export of Peru. Um, it's grown at high altitudes and very cold temperature, and then they dry it and they grind it to make a flour.
Ah.
And they can mix it into bread or cookies, or I've had maca toffees before from Peru. But how I generally use it, and a lot of the people who are working into an optimal nutrition, is I generally just have it in a raw in a smoothie. You can mix it in with your raw chocolates. You can sprinkle it. It's not so good in a juice, for example, but it's quite a malty texture. It's like a white yellow powder. And it has some really good benefits. One of the main ones, especially that I'm so passionate about getting out to the hot yoga people, is that it's an adaptogen.
Oh.
And really, adaptogens help the cells to communicate with each other. They literally help you adapt, not just from an extremely hot climate to an extremely cold climate, which is what we really suffer with, being in Northern Europe. When you go and practice in the hot room, it's not like California, you just put another pair of shorts on and your flip-flops and you come out and you're in the sunshine and the temperature hasn't changed that much.
Big
You go
difference.
from 110 degrees and you're coming out and you're freezing and you're sweating underneath your layers of coats still, right? So these adaptogens help people cope with the stresses of life, the more demands that are placed on us now through increasing technology, even though if those are positive demands. it's still a bit more stressful than it used to be. So
Absolutely.
it's really, really important. But some of the benefits of particularly maca are for balancing out hormones.
Ah,
Ah, and it used to be that traditionally the Incans would be using that product to help them with stamina. I love the
makes
story.
sense. I mean, because it's a really intense, place on Earth. Such a high elevation.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that kind of evolved out of there.
Yeah, and the warriors used to use it before they went to battle to increase their stamina, to increase their focus. They would eat maca in whatever form, baked, whatever form the maca root they would have, because now you just pretty much get it as powder. And they would eat the maca, they would win their battles, they would have increased stamina. But one of the side effects of maca is that it really increases your sex drive.
Oh my. So,
Right.
beware.
Beware. The Incan warriors, apparently their wives had to be locked up when they came down for their own safety. Uh, I quite like that story, but I've had a few of my students, I recommend all the time that my students take maca, and they'll say to me, do you get any interesting side effects from it? And I'll say, why? And they'll say, well, I just feel very young and frisky. And I'm saying, good, that's the maca kicking in. You might notice it after a couple of weeks. It might take 4 to 6 months. It depends how depleted you are.
Excuse me while I write that down. Very interesting. So this is one of the superfoods that you've incorporated into your diets, and when we were kind of chatting on Facebook about this, I know that you said something's going on there in the UK about restrictions or licensing or some kind of access issues involving things that are labeled superfoods. What's going on in the UK right now?
Well, it's very interesting. It's generally not just the UK, it's EU regulations.
Ah.
And you've probably heard of Codex Alimentarius.
Yeah, the term sounds familiar, but I think maybe it'd be good for you to explain it in a little more depth.
Well, I think, overall, there need to be organizations that are dealing with the standardization of products that we take. For example, same organizations that will check that a pharmaceutical product is safe to take. It's
Right.
a big subject, massive. So there needs to be standardizations. And obviously, with a lot of the products that we're getting in, moringa from Africa, baobab, maca, all of those superfoods, ashwagandha, a lot of them are adaptogens. They're indigenous products, and we don't really know too much about them because they're
Aha.
not in our history, they're not in our culture. So I think the idea that we have a standardization regarding quality of a product is a good thing. However, what's happening is that you get organizations who are selling the products. For instance, a great organization called Raw Living Products, rawliving.eu. They sell large quantities of, great raw foods and superfoods. And they have been told that they cannot give a description of the product on their website that suggests a benefit from that product.
Right. It's sort of like in the States where you have,
FDA.
this statement has not been
Yeah.
regulated by the FDA, which, for anyone that knows what the FDA is up to, in a way, to me, it's like, well, this is good to take then, because
Yeah,
really
kind of
they're
think the
just,
same thing.
they're just kind of like, at this stage, they're really just shills for Monsanto and GMOs and
Exactly.
anything grown with pesticides. So I assume that there's something similar happening in the UK and the EU on that front.
Absolutely. It's very scary. And I think obviously now we've got access to all of these great products where we just wouldn't have had the access to them before. And
That's
it's
right.
really helping people. And I mean, for example, I've got in my smoothie here, I've just got a little smoothie, just a berry smoothie, and it's got in there
Mm.
some Ethereum gold.
Ethereum gold?
Ethereum gold,
It's like
which
a heavy mineral of some kind.
it's a little mineral, yeah. And this
Interesting.
activates the PEA in the brain, which is the bliss hormone.
Ah.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
Ah, looks
Bliss.
delicious. I wish we were actually in a TV studio and I could just, reach over and have a sample of that.
It's good. A little bit of coconut milk. It's really good.
Mm.
But and that says on it, that's an American product, and that says on it, FDA do not approve of anything, any health statement related to this product. And yeah, you're right. The backlash makes you go, well, I want some of that. They're saying that we can't say anything positive about this product. It does kind of go the other way, but with the EU, none of these websites can now advertise the benefits of their product. So it really is down to us to let people know about the great benefits of these products.
Wow.
And for me, with the adrenal fatigue and with sweating so much, I mean, I've just been in 8 classes in the last 48 hours. I've practiced 3 times. I've taught 5 classes. I
Wow.
feel fantastic,
Because
right?
you're balancing out that extremes with the incorporation of superfoods into your diet.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly.
So if the product manufacturers are not able to discuss what's going on in their and what the properties of these various food types are, is there anything happening in the blogosphere? Are you talking about it on your website where people can find out information so that maybe it's a third party kind of thing? Do you have
That's the
any?
only way it can be at the moment. And I
Mm.
think what will happen in the long term is that those companies, those organizations may look to close down in some way people who are making these claims, which will be very difficult for them to do. But yeah, I've just put on my website, naomiclarkyoga.com, a whole, I've written my story about how superfoods have helped me move through chronic fatigue and to be in the hot room. And people say, wow, you've got adrenal fatigue. You've just taught 3 classes. How do you do that? And I say, because I'm supporting myself with superfoods. And then we have this conversation. And then I slowly start to see my students and people who I'm teaching learning about these products, get really excited about them. They're very ancient products, alchemical, beautiful, natural, unadulterated, pure products. And they're starting to go, you know what? I feel amazing. It's
Wow.
moved me from practicing once or twice a week to practicing 3 or 4 times a week, which has in turn given me the stamina to deal with my back problem. And it's moved me beyond depression or
Yeah.
anxiety or insomnia. So I think those things are so important, especially back again in Northern Europe. We don't have enough sunlight going on.
No.
And a lot of those products that are grown in really hot countries capture the energy from the
Hmm.
sunlight. And that's a way that we can put that in us really
Wow.
quickly, really easily.
It's this is really inspiring talking to you because I think of myself as being pretty healthy and trying to incorporate chia seeds and quinoa and things as much as I can and snacking on pumpkin seeds because I heard they're high in something or other, but I don't keep track of it too well, but now I'm inspired to check out your website and it's naomiclarkyoga.com
Yes.
and find out about some more of these superfoods because it does sound like this is a great way to kind of incorporate into our practice, whether you're doing hot yoga, any kind of hot yoga, or just a regular, Ashtanga or Vinyasa practice. It sounds like
Yeah.
this is a great thing to add on.
Absolutely, for sure. I would encourage anybody to go out, check out those products, and just work with them for a couple of weeks and just see your practice go through the roof.
Excellent. Then I would like to suggest if you have any questions for Naomi and you're looking at watching this video on our website, that you can look down there for the comments box and drop in some comments and maybe check the link. The link will be up there somewhere on the page. You go to Naomi's site and find out more. And very soon be able to take a class with Naomi on Muuyu.com as we're very close to launching.
Yay!
Yay!
Hey, good to chat to you.
Thanks, hon. It was great. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to all of our visitors on the site, and we'll see you on the yoga mat.
Very welcome. Namaste.
Namaste.